University. And now we'll be listening to Professor Faustino NLANDO, is teaching at the Catholic University of Angola.
De faire part de cette conférence. Et je veux aussi remercier mon évêque qui est ici, qui a eu l'initiative de m'amener à Abidjan la fois passée, où j'ai connu Jean-Paul. Alors c'est à son égard que j'ai été invité ici. Par les soucis de me faire comprendre, j'ai dit porter ces slides ici. Je vais lire ce qui est là, littéralement. Si jamais j'ai prononcé mal le mot, alors vous allez voir ce que je voulais dire. Au moins l'intention serait là. Donc vous allez m'accompagner tous dans une très bonne voie. En fait, je suis professeur à l'Université catholique d'Angola. J'ai été diocésain et puis j'ai cru que j'allais être jésuite. Je me suis fait jésuite, j'ai fait le vœu. Et après tout, je me suis rendu compte que j'aimais aussi la femme. Alors je suis allé de l'autre côté. Je suis marié et père de 6 enfants aujourd'hui. Et donc, je suis à l'église, je sers l'église, je suis l'église. C'est l'église ad intra et l'église ad extra. Et donc, je me considère membre de l'église. Allow me then to begin with this quote from Michael Murphy, who says, "Today we live in a wider societal context where the consciousness and the openness to plurality become the fundamental wisdom and core value to social security and stability." As we all know, ethics is about discerning what is right and good in human behavior and relationships. And when applied to the challenge of plurality, ethics become the tool for understanding and facing the challenge of the complex social environment like schools, where the differences of identities, perspectives, cultures, and values play out every day. So, any speech about plurality tends to integrate the 3 elements: diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what are we thinking about when we talk about diversity is an assumption that despite our social, cultural, identity, or ideological differences, we all belong to the same human family. And when we talk about equity, it's about what John Rawls calls justice as fairness. It ensures that everyone has a fair access to opportunities and resources as a way of addressing historical disparities. And when we talk about inclusion, we are thinking about social or moral duty of creating welcoming and supportive atmosphere, ensuring that each one feels valued, respected as part of community with rights and obligations, no matter who, how, and where they are. Now, how to move from this sociological perspective to an ethical approach in the school context. That is the question we would like not to answer. I'm not bringing answers here. I'm just raising some questions and trying to find out if there is something to talk about. So ethics of plurality in the school context, diversity, equity, and inclusion. In fact, I had only diversity and equity, but I think it's a triangle that works. So I included inclusion inside. There are 3 main questions. Is ethics a school responsibility? Or in other words, the school have the obligation of teaching ethics? Je l'ai dit parce que ça, c'est une question. Est-ce que l'école a la responsabilité d'enseigner l'éthique? Il y a les gens qui défendent que l'éducation morale et éthique, c'est à la famille. C'est la famille qui doit éduquer les enfants, c'est pas l'école. Est-ce que l'école a cette responsabilité? Est-ce que nous avons la conscience que les élèves, les enfants passent beaucoup plus de temps à l'école plutôt qu'à la maison? Est-ce que l'école doit renoncer à la responsabilité d'éduquer les enfants pour se concentrer rien qu'à l'instruction? Et donc c'est ça le problème, c'est ça la question. Which perspective of ethics should the school adopt in a plural context? Et donc si nous estimons que l'école doit enseigner l'éthique, doit enseigner la morale, c'est quelle morale, c'est quelle éthique, par quelle approche, par quelle méthode? Donc c'est ça la question que nous proposons. Can ethics address the challenge of diversity, equity and inclusion in the school context? So those are the three questions we are going to try to find some elements of response on them. As I said, there is no definite answers to those questions. There are two main traits that address the question regarding the primary reason for the school's existence. Trait number one, school has an instructive responsibility. Tel que je l'ai dit, il y a des perspectives, il y a des lignes qui défendent qu'à l'école, rien que l'instruction des enfants, ce n'est pas l'éducation morale des enfants. Trait number two, school has both educational and instructive responsibility. L'école a les deux responsabilités d'instruire et d'éduquer les enfants. In fact, according to the first trait, school is a place where children are exposed to various fields of study and to prepare them to learn how to think critically and how to develop a great capacity of communication and problem-solving skills needed to navigate the world. Miguel Najib, Attorney General of Brazil, and member of non-partisan school movements, argues that the teaching process must be free from any moral, ethical, religious, or ideological influence of the teacher in the classroom and of any other school member within the school context. Et donc le monsieur du Brésil, il pense que l'école ne doit pas passer, ne doit pas influencer les élèves sur le point de vue de la dimension morale, éthique, religieuse, idéologique et tout ça. Il doit simplement se concentrer dans sa mission d'instruire les enfants et non de les influencer moralement, éthiquement et tout comme ça. The school activity should focus on teaching students how to read, how to write, how to calculate, how to argue logically, developing critical and autonomous thinking. However, Raquel Sinza-Jaboloka, lecturer at University of Namibia, argues, and we agree with her, for the second trait, by assuming that the primary reason for the school's existence is to provide integral education to students and develop knowledge, technical skills, ethical and moral values they need to succeed in life and to make them able to promote common well-being within their communities. C'est-à-dire cette deuxième perspective, ça défend l'éducation et l'instruction au même moment, comme responsabilité de l'école. David Ross aligns, in my opinion, in the same perspective when he says, as the sense perceptions are the data of natural science, the moral convictions of thoughtful and well-educated people are the data of ethics. This means that school can expect having a moral man without assuming, school can't expect having a moral man without assuming the ethic occurs, without assuming the ethics as a cost-cutting issue at school. In fact, this educational flowchart shows us how long the kids stay at school. This is from Portugal, this is from Brazil, and this is from Angola, and I believe that this is the same reality here. So what you can see, students or kids are at school from 0 to 17 years, and there is in some contexts, some free activities. They still remain at school for doing something else, the extracurricular activities. And then they go to the university, they have 4 years for graduation, and if possible, 2 years for masters, and if possible, 3 to 10 years eventually for doctorates. And we can imagine how long the school are staying, or the kids are staying, the youth are staying at school, and how long they are with the family. And if we are in developed countries where the technology and the job is there, the parents are not even in school. And when we said that education belongs to the family, which family are we talking about? So we can be leaving students or kids without any education. And then the social media will start educating our kids. So this is to be considered, that we need to see if we have to accept the first trait or the second trait. Unfortunately, as Bernadette Nazarian said, it seems that first in Western Europe and later all over the world, schooling took off during Industrial Revolution, when parents had to get to working factories and so keep their children busy all day, preparing them for their future role as a wage earners. Despite that, there are still many academics such as Martin Nussbaum, who wrote the book Not for Profit, Why Democracy Needs the Humanities. And I invite you to read if you've never read that book. Another book is Nunzio Ordine, who wrote the book The Uselessness, The Usefulness of the Useless. 2 important books, in my opinion, that we have to read and see what is useless, how much useful it can be at the end of the day. Those 2, and plus others, believe that school plays an essential role in students' development as an individual, expanding their ability in numerous social and multidisciplinary skills, and shaping their ethical sense of justice, respect, care, common good, and human dignity. Meaning that school can lose an important part of their mission if they left ethics and humanities behind, by focusing only on STEMs as it has been suggested lately. In fact, in Angola, we had a World Bank who is recommending that we have been concentrating a lot on social sciences, on the humanities and human sciences, but we don't concentrate on STEM. They are asking us to shift. We have to go to STEMs, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, because the future is there. But the problem is, only with technology, without a moral man, we can imagine what kind of society we need to be building now. So, I'm not against the STEM. They are important for the social, economic development, but we can't put aside humanities and the social sciences as well. And then I tried to see what Cardinal Versaldi said. He suggested that school, it's my interpretation from what I've read from him, He suggested that school has the mission and the challenge of building an educational environment that allows the integral education of a child, which includes the development of mind, the hands, and the heart. And by the development of mind, we are talking about preparing students to develop critical, logical, coherent, and autonomous thinking. By the hands, we are thinking about preparing students to develop technical skills, professional abilities, as well as entrepreneurial and innovative mindset. And by the heart, we are talking about the necessity we have at school to be preparing students to love and to care. The school must awaken the feeling of empathy, solidarity, equity, and justice. The problem is, what do we do that without moral and ethics at school? There is any other issues to provide that dimension of preparing hearts. So that is the question, and this leads us to our second question, which is which perspective of ethics should the school adopt as a plural environment? I would like to highlight here two main perspectives related to moral teaching approach: the normative perspective and the meta-ethics perspective, the two of them. So which of them should the school adopt to ensure that the plurality is still there? The first one says that ethics is based on well-founded standards of right and wrong, good and bad, that prescribe what human beings ought to do, usually in terms of rights, obligations, benefits to society, fairness, or specific virtues. As we can see, the normative ethics perspective derives from Greek words ethos and the relative of moral words, or Latin word moralis, which means customs or habitual way of doing things according to the values coming to the community. And it consists for the prescription of the right doing, whose the opposite is the wrong doing. Ici, l'idée c'est l'hétéronomie morale qui vient de normes qui nous sont, dirons-les, imposées ou présentées par la société, sans passer par la discussion. Alors nous assimilons des vertus sans aucune profondeur. C'est-à-dire nous disons vous devez respecter, oui je respecte. Et parfois je peux faire semblant que je respecte l'humanité de l'autre. Parce qu'il y a l'humanité qui a été universelle, mais cette humanité a été particularisée. Pourquoi? Parce que nous n'avons pas l'éthique. Il y a le manque d'éthique, même, permettez-moi de le dire, même dans l'Église. Il y a beaucoup plus de morale. Parce que nous pensons qu'il faut être moralement correct. Mais en moi, je ne me rends pas compte quand je suis dans une mauvaise route parfois. Quand je me porte mal, il suffit que je ne sois pas vu. Et nous pensons que faire du bien ou du mal, c'est la question d'être vu par d'autres. Ça, c'est la crise de l'éthique, ça, c'est l'absence de l'éthique. Nous avons la morale et on veut être parfois moralement correct. Et nous oublions que la question éthique, c'est beaucoup plus profonde que ça. The normative ethics perspective derives, as I said, and consists of that. In the normative ethics, the schools decide what values are crucial for peaceful coexistence within the school context and ask students to respect them, acting in accordance with them. As John P. Janowski pointed out, we commonly think of ethics in education as the codification of morality. We tend to decide the institutional ethical framework that includes rules, values, duties, or standards of moral conduct that determine what is right or wrong in the school environment and what the students ought to do and what they ought not to. From this perspective, school can just decide that diversity, equity, and inclusion are a sort of prima facie duties, eventually not with the same meaning as in David Roth's perspective, but assuming that they don't have to be justified because they are self-evident to any rational being. The question is, can we talk about ethics of plurality if the school imposes on the students the respect of diversity, equity, and inclusion without discussing with the students why they are meaningful to all and what makes them meaningful? And if the school do so, is not the school pushing the students to pretend acting like morally correct, even if they are not convinced about the goodness or the rightness of the duty of respecting diversity or being just to everyone? Those are just questions, and they lead us to our last topic. Can ethic of plurality address the challenge of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the school context? I think, as Jürgen Habermas pointed out, that ethics of plurality can address the challenge of diversity, equity, and inclusion if the school prepares the student for the meta-ethics based on the rational and inclusive discussion. In fact, according to John Pijanowski, ethics in a school context should be critical moral analysis, aimed to prepare students to understand the deepest meaning of each particular value, norm, or rule they have to assume as a prima facie duty, and understand how their singular actions affect other people as well as the entire social system. Which means that school should focus on critical moral analysis of cases related to inclusion, discrimination, racism, injustice, and so on, instead of creating moral codes to force students to respect diversity, to be fair to everyone, to include everyone, even if they feel like they don't like them. When the crucial question has to be if there is any moral or rational reasons to hate them. So what Martin Nussbaum called the immoral, how would I say that? Immoral feelings. So we might have immoral feelings without knowing that they are immoral feelings. So how do we overcome those immoral feelings? Is by discussing the meaning of things instead of trying to put them in the mind of students, of kids, to be living those values. This means that school should be a place where students are trained systematically on ethical discussions to bring out what diversity really is and why is it important, what equity is and why is it crucial, what inclusion is and why it is relevant in a plural context, of the modern societies. And they should be trained as well to analyze if they are opposite. I mean, the opposite of all those can be good or right in the same way, and if not, they should know why not. And then we can prepare students to critical approach of even the values they can carry with them. We don't only give them values, but they know why those values are meaningful. Il y a des moments comme ça, nous nous demandons, il y a des gens qui vont à l'église, il y a nos petits qui vont à l'église et tu leur demandes, est-ce que tu crois que l'église est importante? Ils vous disent oui, oui, oui. Pourquoi? Parce que mes parents m'ont toujours montré c'est le chemin de l'église. Alors il ne sait pas pourquoi il va à l'église. Il peut rester à l'église en causant pendant toute la messe et il sort, il est content de voir aller à l'église. C'est ça, c'est-à-dire il a accompli son devoir, il est allé à l'église. Mais c'est quoi le problème? Il n'a pas été préparé de penser la valeur, l'importance de l'église. Pourquoi il est allé à l'église? Pour aller chercher quoi? Et c'est ça la perspective de la méta-éthique. La méta-éthique nous fait mettre dans le chemin de la réflexion pour savoir le valeur, ce valeur que nous adoptons. Quelle est le juste valeur qu'on se valeur? C'est ça le livre de la généalogie de la morale de Nietzsche que beaucoup parmi nous dans l'église nous n'acceptons pas. Mais la généalogie de la morale a sa place aussi dans l'église. Et parfois c'est ça les questions quand Nietzsche nous parle de la mort de Dieu. Dieu est mort et tout est permis. C'est ça le problème parce qu'il y a l'athéisme pratique. Et quand nous disons nous aimons Dieu et nous détestons notre frère, nous venons de tuer le Dieu en qui nous croyons. Et donc si nous allons sur le chemin de la méta-éthique, nous allons préparer les enfants dans l'esprit critique, dans le discernement, ils auront approfondi les valeurs et les valeurs auront autre signification en eux. Et ils sortiront spontanément sans faire, without pretending that they are being respectful. I'm just about to finish, I have 5 minutes. This way, students will be prepared to act ethically with the firm conviction because they know the meaning of what they do and they have deep reasons of what make their actions good or right. Therefore, students will be able to act beyond heteronomic logic of the normative ethics, where they are asked to do what is good and right as established by the community itself. Instead, they will embrace the autonomic perspective, which is a meta-ethic perspective. As Sommer says, prepare students to understand what they call good or right and why they think it's good or right. In other words, meta-ethics allows students to understand the nature and the dynamic of ethical principles and the way they learn and acquire moral beliefs. Thank you for listening.